Hi friends, this is Joe, and this is episode number 197 of the Dekahedron RPG podcast. Almost at 200. Anyway, this is, I think, the last episode of how I set up a Sandbox campaign. Other than I have to address some feedback and stuff that I got along the way. I'll do that next week. And yeah, there was some really great feedback and a lot of comments on YouTube, and I want to talk about those. One guy last episode talked about a great public game thing. Yeah, I want to talk about that. Anyway, there's a bunch of stuff I want to talk about addressing the feedback. But for this time, I said that there were 2 steps left. One was the map. And I don't know how to make a map interesting, especially on an audio-only podcast. Never mind YouTube, but yeah, I don't. So I'm just going to say you make a map. As for random generators and everything, I don't do a lot of that. Just draw a really sloppy map, and I draw a clump of trees. I say that's a forest, and I draw another clump, and whatever. I don't worry about each hex doing a random determination and everything. Just draw big circles. Well, irregular circles. Call it a day. uh, Also, I like to use hexographer. And if you're at a crunch, they have a random generation thing in there. There's all sorts of software you can use if you don't want to do by hand. I don't worry about making the map pretty. If you watch some YouTube channels about how to make a map, it's all about how to make a pretty map. Who cares? The players should never see the map, right? The map is yours as the GM. You don't show it to the players, right? It's a game of exploration. It's not exploration if you have a map. Anyway, although for this campaign, I'd probably give them a simplified map that shows them where all the villages are and the roads that connect them, but not like what the terrain or anything like that is, because that kind of stuff they would probably know. All right. All right. So that's the map. Like I said, I'm not going to do a whole episode. So the last step is the inciting incident. And to be honest, I didn't used to do this. In a Sandbox campaign, it seems to me that an inciting incident is almost the antithesis of a Sandbox, where you're telling the players, you can go do everything, you go find the adventure. But I have some players, James, are you watching? James, who aren't good at finding adventures. They want to be given something. And for James, it's because he's a gamist and he wants to win. So he needs to know what winning means. And he's going to send me a message as soon as he hears that. And he's going to say, that's not true. I'm not a gamist, because he doesn't like being labeled. But James, go back and listen to episode 50, where we talk about gold. In your words, you said, I like gold because it's like the score, so I know I'm winning. And then go back to the other episode we did about sandboxes and say how you feel like you're spinning your wheels because you don't know what you're supposed to be doing. You're supposed to do whatever you want. But anyway, James isn't alone like that, right? He's gamist. I'm narrativist. So my natural instinct isn't to look at it through his eyes, but I have to, right? Because if he's my player, or if any other gamist is my player, I need to put things in. But it's still, I don't make it, it's not an inciting adventure. It's not anything like that. It's just an incident that gets them hooked onto the campaign and lets them know that this thing is happening. And then whatever they do in response to that incident is what creates the adventure. I like that. All right. So for our campaign, we've been talking a whole lot about the Northern Kingdom and the Southern Kingdom, Caldor and whatever I named the other one, right? And we said that this particular area is claimed by the Southern Kingdom. It nominally belongs to the Southern Kingdom, but they kind of pay tribute to both, and they're in that in-between state. Their population is a bit of both. I said before that when we were rolling up names, like 2/3 of the names are Southern, 1/3 is Northern. This is very much based on what we now call York in England. Back then it was called the Dane Law, because the Danes came and conquered it. And for part of the 8th and 9th century, 10th, no, 8th and 9th centuries. York, that northeast part of Britain, wasn't part of England. It was part of, well, actually, the Danelaw, it gets complicated. Depends on when you're talking about. But yes, the Danelaw was part of England at the time I'm going to be talking about, but they still kept Danish customs and stuff like that. Anyway, getting too far in the weeds there. So that's how England was in real life. And I am just stealing an event that really happened from that time period, and I'm just going to place it into my world because it's, I was going to say it's great. It's not really great that it happened, but from a narrative point of view, from a story point of view, it's pretty cool, and you can see how it would drive adventure. That it happened, it's sad fact about humanity. People suck. Anyway, so in the year 1002, I think, Ethelred the Unready, as we call him today, I was just going to explain his name. You don't want a history lesson. You don't care. Ethelred the Unready. He was king of England. And England had this large Dane population, just like where I'm talking about here in Elmsfjord has a large Northern Kingdom population. And King Ethelred said that on St. Brice's Day, which was November 13th, I think, 1002, all the Danes should be put to death. Right? He sent out the secret order, and St. Brice's Day was chosen because it was a Saturday, and the Danish population, culturally, Saturday was wash day, was bathing day. So they'd be without their weapons, they'd be without their armor because they were engaging in these baths to clean themselves, which also had a social and religious significance to them. So he gave the order that on that day, all the Danes were to be put to the sword. And whether or not it happened is a matter of scholarly debate. It definitely happened in some places, like they dug up a church in what is now Oxford, which was never part of the Danelaw, but there were Danes there anyway. They dug up a church in Oxford, and they found a whole bunch of Danish bodies who were all buried together, and they think maybe they were subject to the St. Brice's Day Massacre, as it became known as. The Danish king, his sister lived in, the king's name, by the way, the Danish king was Svein Forkbeard. Svein's sister lived in the Danelaw of England, and it is believed she was put to death. And that didn't make him very happy. So he gathered his army and he conquered England. The Danish king became king of England. So that did not work out too well for Ethelred to give that order. A lot of times when you read this in the history, they'll say it was the Vikings. Again, Viking was an occupation. Viking pretty much meant like pirate. A Viking is a criminal. This wasn't a criminal. This was a king doing quote unquote legitimate war, depending, if you think war is ever legitimate. We're not going to get there. This is a gaming podcast. So yeah, it takes something away from him to call him Viking. He wasn't Viking. He was a king leading an army. He wasn't a criminal leading raiders. Anyway, he takes over the country. He doesn't last very long as king. He dies, and Canute the Great, we talked about Canute before, takes over. He marries Queen Emma of Normandy, who's awesome figure in history. Anyway, we're getting all too historical. So this is what we're going to do. Our southern king is going to issue this edict, and he's going to send it to the jarls of all the villages that on a certain day, and we'll say it's 3 months from today, that we'll call it the full moon 3 months from now, and we'll start the campaign in August. So we'll say the full moon in September. That all the people of the Northern Kingdom heritage are living within the Southern Kingdom are to be put to death. And that order comes to the Jarl of our village. And what's he going to do about it? So if he just sits on it in secret, that's not an inciting incident. Well, it could be if he actually makes it happen. But that we want to bring the players in. So he has a meeting and he lets the entire population vote on what to do with it. And then you give the players the tie-breaking vote. Or he just asks for like certain counselors and the players are in that counseling group. What is their counsel going to be? Or if you're afraid that the players will say yes, and what are you going to do then if you have a player that picked that Northern Kingdom descent? You know what I mean? Just say that he decides that he's not going to do it. That is not the principles that he was raised with. That is not the ethics that he was raised with. And even though he worships, even though he worships Lug instead of and not Bel, this is not a good thing to do. I said both Lug and Bel were good deities, so he's not going to do it. And so maybe he sends the players to Asfjord to see what's going to happen there. And if their Jarl is going to go through with it, to spread the word and offer sanctuary to any Northern Kingdom descended people, any Bel followers who want to come to Asfjord, and maybe do the same for other nearby villages. Yeah, that's it. There's not really a whole lot more to say about that. That is the incident. You put it in the player's hand and let them figure out what to do about it. And there is your adventure. There is the start of a great campaign. Even if it never comes to fruition, you have now got them out in the wilderness exploring. You've got them into the campaign world, finding things and flipping switches, talking to people, and making friends and enemies. And that's where the magic of the sandbox comes into play. That is pretty much it. Let me know what you think. Do you think that is enough for a sandbox? I think it is, especially once you have the map. Like I said, you just let the players loose. What, go to Asfjord and save the Bel followers. There you go. Instant mission. How they do it, that's up to them. And this isn't a go slay the dragon thing, right? This is talking to people, and it's the kind of game that I like. Role-playing, being in that character, being in that world, accomplishing things, not just emptying a dungeon. Anyway, that's all I have. Let me know what you think. Feedback at dekahedron.com. Comments below. You can call the feedback line at... Do I know the number? No. No, it's the area code I don't know. The rest is RPG cast. But anyway, it's on screen right now. It's in the show notes. sayhi.chat/dekahedron. I got a message there the other day. That's one of the ones I'm answering next week. Anyway, let me know what you think. Thanks for watching and or listening. And until next time, happy gaming, happy life. Bye.